spin it again.
It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena.
You know what, I've heard people call, and I kind of like it, the era that we're in, the post-truth kind of era.
And lately there's been a lot of coverage in the real news about the growing and booming business of creating fake news.
Well, I don't know, maybe he was watching CNN fake news. What do you think?
You are fake news.
Sir.
Go ahead.
Let us return to the fight. This battle is far from over.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of Real News on your morning time. It's 9:06 on this morning, which is July 27th. My name is Mr. Henry. David Shine Thompson with us here as well. This is Real News. If you have just joined us, the motto of this program, what we're doing here, we're building community, y'all. That's what we're doing. We're not about likes. We're not about clicks. We're not about all that stuff. We appreciate those things for the sake of tweaking the algorithm. The overlord. We ask the, embrace the singularity, I guess, if you will. But the reason why we're doing what we're doing is to create a space of open, cordial communication and dialogue so that we can have disagreements with people. So that when we do have those disagreements, it's just with disagreements amongst friends and family, not amongst enemies. That's what we're all about here at Real News. How's everybody doing this morning? I got the unified chat going. Mixer's no longer a thing. But hey, man, Facebook Gaming's still there. But we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitch, we're on all these things. I just posted it to Minds. We're all across the places, man, trying to build out this community. How's everybody going this morning? What are you into? Greatest audience in the nation appreciation segment. I see Eric, Bob, Trace is in there, Michael, Aaron. We got a bunch of folks hanging out with us this morning. If you're on YouTube, I got the unified chat up here as well, so I can see all the comments coming this morning. Let me know what you're into, what you're reading through, novels, books you're into, articles that you pulled. I was actually just talking to Shine off air and saying, man, it seems like 80% of the coverage this weekend was all about riots here, smashing windows there, violence here, gunshots over there, just civil unrest, protests somewhere thrown in there, I suppose. And it's just a lot to take in. It's a lot to synthesize all at one time. So I'm wondering, are y'all hearing the same thing? You seen the same thing? Whatever else? I'll tell you what else happened this weekend, though. My buddy Eric and I, a whole bunch of other volunteers, we hung out, did the thing for the Nashville Taxpayer Protection Act. Hey, something else that happened this weekend, though, that's arguably even more important than that. My buddy Shine, man, had a birthday this weekend. How was this weekend, man? How you doing?
Oh, I am fantastic. I am fantastic, buddy. And I did have a great birthday. I had lots of Hawaiian steak. It's like steak with pineapples on it. And I mean a lot. They said, what do you want for your birthday? I said, all the steak. And
there's some pineapple in there.
Well, and they decided to go with the pineapple. I thought it was a nice touch. It's like a luau feel, you know. But yeah, I turned let's see. I'm 24 this year.
I'd believe it, dude.
I'm just kidding. But I had a great weekend, and there was no rioting or smashing of windows or people getting shot at my house, so that was good. So I didn't experience all that. But it was a great weekend. We put up some great videos of you out doing the good work, spreading the word about the 34% property tax increase and how Nashvillians can stop it.
Yeah, man.
You know.
Yeah. Hey, happy birthday again, buddy. Over
Thank
the weekend. Shannon and I have been buddies for about as long as I've known almost anybody else in my life, man. And hey, it's one of those things we can't get rid of each other now, you know. I think we're doing good work, though, this dynamic duo that Shannon and I have. I think we've always done good work. I think we've always had sort of things going on in our lives where it's just a certain niche that we fill at that particular time for whatever community we're involved in. And we just hope that y'all are loving the ride with us. Judy just said in YouTube, by the way, do you see me in YouTube? We see you, Judy. We see you. We see you over there in YouTube. Unified chat, grabbing all the things. Norm's over there in YouTube as well. We appreciate the diversity, man. You got to spread it around. You got to diversify your interest. Lest we get shut down on one channel, switch it over to another. That's what you do. You got to keep yourselves on your toes all the time. Hey, let's jump straight into the story this morning. By the way, 4goodgovernment.com, number 4goodgovernment.com. That Nashville Taxpayer Protection Act we were talking about just a second ago. That is to repeal the 34% property tax increase here in the Nashville area. It would cap any property tax increases every year going forward at just 2%. If you want to get it above 2%, if Metro government wants to get it above 2%, it has to go back to a referendum, meaning 51% of the people living in Davidson County would have to approve a property tax on themselves. To be a very strange thing, which kind of proves the point about a property tax increase. If you can't get the people's approval to do it, if you can't get at least 51% of the people that have to pay for a property tax increase to approve a property tax increase, then maybe you should consider cutting spending first. Now, if you can get enough people together, garner some support in some campaign by telling them we need to have more taxes to pay for this, or increase spending here, or increase spending for police officers, or increase spending for minimum wage. I mean, whatever you want to do, that's fine. But if you can't get the 51% needed to increase taxes on those people, it kind of proves the point a little bit of saying these people are going to have to pay for it. I think some of the more affluent people in this area in Davidson County probably have no problem with their property tax going up because they're not going to miss it anyways. It's the people that are on fixed incomes. It's elderly individuals. It's those of a lower socioeconomic status where that percentage of property tax increase is going to legitimately and seriously hurt them. I'm talking they're going to have to make actual financial sacrifices. Y'all think I'm kidding? Go watch the video that was just posted on the Americans for Prosperity Tennessee page, on the Middle Tennessee page, on the Real News page. Gwendolyn gave us this testimony. Living in the same house for 52 years. She's on fixed income. She's going to have to, at some point, she said, make a decision between this or that, between medicine or property taxes. At some point, it's going to hit her in a very real way. I'm not meaning to fearmonger here. It's just, it is what it is. Here's the other story that I feel, I'm not sure how I feel about this story yet, but it's actually coming from the Washington Examiner. So this headline is now making national story. This story is now making national headlines. Washington Examiner legislative committee appointed to review emergency executive powers in Tennessee. And I say I'm not exactly sure how I feel about this because it just seems like there's a lot of politics going on here, which is like, that's the best analysis they've ever heard on this program, right? when you appoint a
so
committee
much politicking going on, so much.
That's what they pay the big dollars here for, real.
So fresh. What a fresh take.
That's a fresh take. We need a button, man. Fresh take button.
Fresh take, man. So
that's
fresh.
A hot take. Here's a story, by the way. A legislative study committee has been put together. The legislative study committee has been appointed to review powers of the executive branch of Tennessee government during a state of emergency. Now, House Speaker Cameron Sexton and Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally, for those that don't know, most people do, is basically the head of the House and the head of the Senate. Okay, leader of the House, leader of the Senate, we'll put it that way.
The big boys.
They're the big boys. Hot take. House Speaker Cameron Sexton, Lieutenant Governor McNally, they appointed 17 legislators to a bipartisan committee. And it is fairly bipartisan. There's a sprinkling of Democrats and Republicans across the board here. And Sexton's office indicated that several members have expressed interest in reviewing current laws given the emergency status caused by coronavirus pandemic. And that's what this all comes down to. This is essentially the House and the Senate stepping back and saying, okay, if and when we go through another version of this again, to what extent does Governor Lee have the capacity to do everything he just did? But I will say, this is where I find this slightly odd, because some of the quotes we're about to get into here in just a second are going to indicate, especially from Lieutenant Governor McNally, saying like, I think Governor Lee did a fantastic job. I'm not giving you any of my analysis yet. I'm just telling you what these people are thinking. Saying, I think Governor Lee did a fantastic job. Okay, well, if you think he did a fantastic job, it's a bit interesting to figure out the motivation behind this, only because once you start shifting around power, the power has to go back to somewhere, to something. And I'm just hoping, I'm literally fingers crossed hoping here that the people that are on this committee understand and recognize that. I'm fairly certain they do, because there's a lot of good folks on these committees. But once you take that power back from the governor, from the executive branch, as I believe you should be doing, I think most of this power should be left with the legislative branch. So let me state that from the very beginning. But as you're taking that power back, that means you have to do something with it at some point, okay? At some point, somebody's going to have to make the hard decisions. And as long as all of you that are on this committee, this is a message to everyone that's on this committee right now, as long as every single one of you on this committee are willing to stand up for those decisions, right, wrong, good, bad, otherwise, and everything in between, and understand and recognize when it comes to something like this, there is usually no correct decision. as far as it means applicability to everyone in the state. There is no way to get it right that will be satisfying to all of this. But if we can decentralize,
well, then maybe take it out of the hands of just the executive.
Yes, dude.
You know,
yes,
I mean, sounds like they're on the right path. If you can't get one solution for everybody, the power could just be decentralized or stripped. Because haven't you said a million times during this, during the big thing was during the mask mandates, like we didn't have a problem with health department suggesting wearing masks. The problem was the criminal penalty. So if we look back after when this committee is just we're gonna have to stream this committee. This will be hilarious. Them just reviewing everything they got. Just think about that. That'll be must-see TV. I don't think you could look at any of the decisions that have been made and said, "Wow, that was a swing and a home run." You know, out of all the decisions that have been made in Tennessee, have there been any that have had just the most dire consequences? Right. No. It's like we don't even know if any of the decisions that have been made have actually helped or not. We have no idea. And that's part of the problem when we're in this situation right now, a pandemic of a novel disease that we don't know very much about, and we have the executive branch making very big decisions. Maybe that's not a great idea, because this committee will be able to look back and figure out what were the effects of these decisions. It's not about, like, what if there is no good decision? Then maybe just take the power away.
Right. And
say, y'all figure it out. And listen to the scientists. We're here for essential services. We'll keep those running as best we can. Hospitals, police, fire. We'll try to figure out school stuff. I don't know. I'm glad they're looking at it. It needs to be looked at.
100%.
When was the last time it was looked at? Like 55 years ago? It was like in the 70s, I think, when this legislation was written in the state of Tennessee.
And from the very beginning, this is arguably the best way to solve most of these situations. Decentralize the decision-making power, make it much more applicable. I mean, make it much more contextually based, proximity based, even of area by area by area. Understand, but here's what I'm saying, man. Forgive my hesitation and my skepticism a little bit. But this is the same body, the same legislative body at the very end of this last session that had fantastic legislation on the table as far as liability protections for businesses and a bunch of healthcare related stuff. I'm talking certificate of need stuff. I'm talking telemedicine stuff, a bunch, and they just left it out there. They just left it out there because of personal spats between individuals. That's the only thing that I bring into this is saying when it comes to the severity of a situation like what's going on with this pandemic, businesses being shut down, our way of life is completely skewed, reoriented to something that we've never thought of, at least not in 2020 for sure. It's a complete, we don't recognize life anymore. When we're dealing with this stuff, coupled with the severity of the virus itself. This is what I'm saying. When stuff comes in like this, you have to take the charge. You have to take the responsibility. And when and if those decision-making times come, you better step up and do something about it is all I'm saying. If you're taking that power back away and decentralizing it, leave it in the power of the people. Let the people make their decisions. Again, let's finish this story out here, and I want to hit a few Facebook comments. A few YouTube, Facebook, all the comments here. Now, Sexton told Center Square in a statement, Governor Lee has done a tremendous job making many tough decisions during this extraordinary and historic pandemic. Our bipartisan House and Senate panel will study existing laws to determine if we can better support subsequent governors while providing more clarity regarding the powers of our judicial and executive branches in emergency situations should similar unprecedented events in our states occur in the future. Now, a spokesman for McNally said the Senate Speaker believes that Lee used emergency powers effectively and efficiently. McNally gave this statement very similar to House leadership statements here. Sexton. McNally said, quote, the COVID-19 pandemic has presented state government with a unique set of circumstances to respond using powers and procedures rarely deployed or even contemplated. Lieutenant Governor McNally believes a discussion, study, and review of the emergency powers and procedures of all branches of government will help Tennessee manage not only this pandemic, but future crises. And I completely agree. Now, let me end with Kerry Roberts' statement here, because the leader of both House and Senate kind of were giving you this weird sort of overarching, slightly ambiguous, flowery language of, well, what are y'all doing exactly? What's going on here? Here's Senator Kerry Roberts. He says, quote, my oath of office requires me to defend our Constitution. including the constitutionally defined roles of our three branches of government. One branch cannot abdicate its responsibility to another, nor can one usurp the authority of another. There are unintended consequences of Title 58 that adversely affect many Tennesseans. I anticipate the General Assembly will contemplate a significant rewrite of Title 58 that will afford the governor the flexibility to govern during an emergency while respecting the integrity of our three distinct branches of government. Further, I expect a more thorough definition of what constitutes a state of emergency and how long a state of emergency can remain in place without the consent of the people's House and Senate. That right there for me, y'all, kind of puts us in a slightly more clear view. Senator Kerry Roberts coming out and saying, look, we had some stuff go down. Bill Lee made some decisions that, I don't know, in retrospect, everyone can Monday morning quarterback if they want to. But going forward, let's see if we can handle this in a different way. Let's see if we can put some of the power back in the people's hand through a representatives in a representative republic doing it that way. And lastly, because this hits so home to the East Tennessee area where you guys are, Representative Jason Zachary will also chair the committee, a Republican here from the Knoxville area. What is that, District 18, 14, 16? Dude, I should know this. Goodness gracious. I think it's 14. God, I'll figure it out. But he's out y'all's way.
You got
Zachary
this.
is. I got this, man. Hey, Michael just said in Facebook, a government for, of, and by the American people needs to be decided by the people. Otherwise, a tyrannical group shall be allowed to bind the hands of the people they're supposed to represent. Hey, something else that's happening here as we wrap up some of the local stories. Tax-free weekend, Tennessee's tax-free weekend, that's coming up, and everything you need to know is in that article linked right there.
I hate taxes.
Yeah, man. I figured it'd be a good thing to go with the theme of the show today, talking about the property tax situation going on here in Nashville, the COVID-related situation going on that's destroying sales. And now we have this property, this tax-free weekend. By the way, Eric said in Facebook, Eric was out there with us at the Howard Building over the weekend, helping gather signatures for that property tax thing. He said, I really enjoyed helping out getting those signatures this weekend. He said, one thing that surprised me was the diversity of political leaning I saw with people who stopped by our tent. I'm glad there's something out there that most of us can agree on. And that's a incredible point that's made right there. I mean, I wish I could actually, by way of legal disclosure and everything, we can't, but I wish I could film the interactions that we have with these people that are coming up, because it doesn't matter. On this issue in particular of raising taxes, it doesn't matter if name a demographic spectrum: left, right, Democrat, Republican, race, religion, national origin, creed. None of it matters. It does not matter who comes up to that tent. Everybody is seemingly unified on this issue of it's just not a good time to raise them. We just can't afford them right now. We need to figure out something else. It's a reassuring thing to see something finally bipartisan, as is tax-free weekend, by the way. Something that's new about that this year here in Tennessee, before I bury the lead here too much, those tax-free weekends, Tennessee's annual sales tax holiday takes place every year on the last weekend in July. This year it begins 12:01 a.m. That's July 31st and ends 11:59 p.m. on Sunday, August 2nd. Now, something that's new this weekend that's different than from previous years is that televisions, video game consoles are also exempt if priced under the threshold amount. So what that means is there's limits on amounts you can spend without taxes. Double to $200 on clothing. The limit has doubled to $200 spending on clothing and school supplies without taxes, and up to $3,000 on computers, other electronics, including televisions, video game consoles, cell phones for the first time. So if y'all are in the market for buying some hot electronic items, or if you're in the market for doing some back-to-school type stuff, I suppose, that's the weekend to do it. There's also a second round, a second tax-free weekend that's specifically dedicated to restaurants and drive-in sales and takeout food and alcohol sales, stuff like that. That'll be August 7th through 9th. But that August 7th through 9th is specifically limited to restaurants and stuff. As we're switching to national topics, by the way, realnewsradio.live, realnewsradio.live. That's the central landing page for all the real news related stuff. You'll see where we're at everywhere across the social medias. Bob just said in Facebook here, what's this new thing about Justice Roberts causing a problem? Well, it's a bit of a Justice Roberts has been Justice Roberts is a squirrely one. Justice Roberts has been causing problems.
Remember Obamacare?
Remember Obamacare?
Remember?
The tax, not a fee, man.
That's a good legislator, that guy, Justice Roberts. He's a good legislator, man. I mean, like when people don't know what to do, he just comes through with the compromise solution. What a guy.
You don't got the votes needed. You just go to John Roberts. Hey, we're playing a little bit. What Bob is talking about, though, there was a case that came to the Supreme Court recently where they denied cert, meaning they denied to take it up in the Supreme Court, which essentially means, I'll explain what it is. I'm pretty sure it was from California, and the claim was that churches were being treated differently than any other venue, any other business, any other industry. The limitation placed on churches, I think it was less than 50 individuals. You could only have up to 50 individuals in California. There was not similar limitations placed on, say, outdoor venues or Home Depot or, I don't know, man, any other thing you could think of. And in general,
or
the way
protests.
Or especially protest. Well, yeah.
That matters because it's other First Amendment activity.
Yeah, that's a very good
point.
Like
Home Depot isn't freedom of association, it's commerce. That's different. Getting together and protesting something is on the same level with press and churches. That's why, like, there's no limitations on the press either. Like, if the press wanted to gather in groups of 50 and cover something, nobody's stopping them from doing that either.
Well, and usually the way that these analyses go is as long as the law is neutral and generally applicable, and I don't know if that's the exact language, it's been a while, but meaning as long as it's neutral in that it doesn't specifically single out religion and it's generally applicable to any and all things, whether it's religion or outdoor gatherings or indoor gatherings or whatever. As long as it doesn't specify that you're specifically discriminating against religion, if it's neutral and generally applicable, usually it's constitutional. And there is also something in sort of statutory interpretation where if the Supreme Court can find a way to make a piece of legislation constitutional, that is usually what they will do. It is usually a last resort. I know this sounds strange, but it is usually a last resort to define a piece of legislation as unconstitutional. I suppose the general premise behind that is that the Supreme Court wants to try and remain as unentangled as possible and let the legislature legislate. What happened over the past couple of days, though, they got this case from California. The Supreme Court said, no, we're not going to look at it, which means it kicks it back to the appeals court that it just came from. And when it kicks it back to the appeals court had already ruled that regardless of what you say about it being a place of worship being restricted by 50 people, there is a state interest there to restrict that to 50 people and not restrict other things to 50 people. Now, what that state interest is would be no longer, the potential to spread COVID-19 around, right? Coronavirus around, whatever is the proper way to say it. That's what Bob's talking about. And it's interesting in the grand context of things because in New York, we had a completely different interpretation. In New York, they were doing a very similar thing. And in New York appeals court basically said, no, that's wrong. It's not neutral and generally applicable. You cannot say that places of worship should be limited to 50 people while also allowing, 5,000 people out on the street or 50 or more people in some other indoor venue or something like that. Anyways, that's what Bob's talking about. But it also goes to an interesting story here of without reading deeper into some of these headlines, it's become insanely easy to manipulate, to mislead. And Sean, if you could, man, there's under the national stories headlines here for today's show notes. By the way, the show notes are linked to the top of the description section every single morning here. You see the Evernote link. There's some stuff going on with the stimulus package I want to touch eventually and some COVID-19 related updates. They're basically saying 14 days isn't the period now. It's just 10 days afterwards. And maybe we should focus more on people with symptoms as opposed to just positive tests. That's exactly what Sean said before. It's a novel virus, meaning it's brand new to us, meaning we're going to continually have research that's going to change and alter. But once you get politics involved, it becomes confusing and misleading and strange to deal with. Sean, that section down there, though, that says, here's how easy it is to mislead everyone in 2020. This one kind of hit near and dear to me. I'm a George Carlin fan. I'm a stand-up fan in general. Actually, I became a major stand-up fan when Shine was working at a place called, what was it called back in Knoxville? Side Splitters. Shine would tell me all these cool stories, and I'd go hang out with him from time to time and just see sort of like the backdoor workings as to what stand-up is, the craft, the art of it. Johnny could actually fill us in with some of these stories about Spanky Brown and some of the conversations he'd have and the podcast they would do together and just like what that culture and life is like. And the timing of being a good comic and all the intricacies and little nuances that go into it. And if you can take this, what I believe to be a very real craft, a very real art form, and couple it with the sting of sort of social satire and political criticism, it becomes a very effective tool. Look at Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle has changed my mind in a political sense on multiple things. I'm sure he's done the same for y'all, too.
Look at Joe Rogan.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's a better point, isn't it?
Dave Chappelle is a giant voice, and it's partly because he's a comedian. Look at Jon Stewart, another guy who is a comedian who has had a huge effect. And those are people like you respect. There's lots of people that we don't respect who have a huge effect, like Stephen Colbert, like Oliver.
Oh, John Oliver.
John Oliver. All those people are comedians, and look how big of an effect they have. For some reason, like, they hone that craft into like expert communication.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, and it can be used for funny, but it can also be used to talk about really polarizing topics with a self-deprecating authority, which makes it more palatable for more people. Like if you're making fun of yourself, you're making fun of the idea. In our culture, and this may not work in every culture, right? But in our particular culture, it's like they're the key masters. They can talk like when Dave Chappelle did that 8-minute, 46-second stand-up thing.
8:42 thing.
8:42.
Right.
That everybody talked about that. It was like the president spoke or something. And then Joe Rogan is like the most viewed person of all time. Him and PewDiePie are like the most viewed people of all time.
In all of human history.
And PewDiePie he's not necessarily a stand-up comedian, but the reason he's big is because he was funny.
Right.
Anyway.
George Carlin, by the way. He's in my opinion, definitely in the top 5 of my greatest stand-up comics of all time. Under that video there, Sean, there's a Twitter link. It says breaking 100 days until the election. If you're offended by foul language, don't watch this effing video. I'm just going to play some of the video, and we don't have to play all of it to prove my point here. Let's just play the video first, Sean, and then as it gets it's George Carlin. Anybody that knows George Carlin knows the point that I'm about to make here. But again, keep in mind, the reason why I'm playing this video is George Carlin was trending on Twitter over the weekend. And I was like, okay, cool. George Carlin. What's going on with Carlin? He was a great social commentary. Guy really didn't like government. He really hated authority. He knocked Republicans and Democrats equally. It didn't matter, man. He was just trying to wake people up to authoritarian overreach. So I clicked on this video and I saw this and I was like, bro, are you for real? Let's go ahead and play this, Sean. We'll cut it off when it gets too bad to deal with. But,
language warning.
Language warning. That's right.
Earmuffs. Earmuffs for the children.
For the children. Here it is.
Say what you want about America, land of the free, home of the brave. We got some dumbass motherfuckers floating around this country. Dumbass motherfuckers, you know? The real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. By the way, it's the same big club they use to beat you over the head with all day long when they tell you what to believe. All day long, beating you over the head in their media, telling you what to believe, what to think, and what to buy. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care about you at all. At all. At all.
You can stop it there.
Nobody seems to notice. Nobody.
I would implore everyone to go listen to the rest of this rant, just from George Carlin.
Oh, man. See, that's his famous rant. I used that in a real news intro.
Right?
Back in the day. I just haven't made one for this show to make a video out of it and all that stuff. It's a great speech.
It is, but here's the problem.
Those clips don't go with that.
That's what I'm saying, dude.
He would have been better off with some My Little Pony B-roll than that stuff.
Let's make one of those.
Let's not do that. Let's not. You make it. You do that. I'm not making a My Little Pony George Carlin.
Some Sailor Moon anime in the background, man.
Now Sailor Moon, yeah. I'm down with Sailor Moon.
Okay. I would absolutely love that. Here's the problem, though. George Carlin's rant there, if listened to just by itself, or if you know anything about George Carlin, or if you listened to that when it was actually delivered at the time it was delivered, what you would have received from that message is a message of freedom, of individuality, of responsibility, self-responsibility, self-reliance, critical thinking, analytical thought. That's what Carlin was trying to get across. Take power back. Take your own life back. Quit being misled. Remove the fog, remove the brush, whatever you have to say. Just do something about taking it back for yourself. That's what he was saying. And he was hitting Democrats, Republicans. He was hitting Green Party libertarians. He was hitting industry. He was hitting business leaders. It didn't matter. It doesn't matter. But apparently, somehow, just putting a few little video clips out there, what you were meant to take away, what George Carlin meant to deliver, was a message of what I just espoused. What the video then says is, I hate Trump. I told you, fascism. That's how easy it is to be misleading in 2020. And Chime made a joke a second ago, but to show that he understands comedic delivery, there's a little bit of sincerity to what he said a second ago. If you put some Sailor Moon clips behind this, or if you put some My Little Pony clips behind this, I could arguably just as easily present a message that Sailor Moon and My Little Pony is trying to take over your life. and you need to fight against the furries.
Or gummy bears. Gummy bears would be the one to do. I think that would be the really fun one.
The Care Bears too.
Yeah, nah, Care Bears wouldn't. Well, maybe. And then superimpose some clips of that chick from Twitch in there, the deer girl. Yeah, man, that'd be a good video.
Right. But this is what I'm saying. A few little video snippets here and there, and all of a sudden, George Carlin overnight became a hero to the left. And that's the problem, dude. When Carlin delivers something like that, he's meant to be a hero to humanity, to all of us, to anyone that is strapped and shackled down by the restraints of this system. That's what he was meant to do. But overnight, he became a hero specifically to the left and anti-Trump. Now, let me ask this as a follow-up. Does anyone think that the left would be accepting of George Carlin today? Are you kidding me? Has anyone that watched that video listened to any one of his other rants? Did anybody listen to the 7 dirty words rant? Has anyone listened to the first, second, third, or multiple times that he dropped a very certain word? But as soon as someone put images of Trump and a Republican behind one of his rants, Carlin all becomes a hero to the left. All of them refusing to recognize that Carlin had hatred across equally. He was an equal opportunity offender.
Grant, consistency is white supremacy, okay?
Jeez, well, right. Eric's, by the way, said Sailor Moon was one of the best. Yes, it was. Daniel said in Facebook, with liberty and justice for all. He quotes, must be 18, void where prohibited, not available in all states, and some exclusions may apply. Doug, stand up. Yeah, that's true. Eric said Zack Morris was trash.
Zack Morris was trash, dude.
Zack Morris was trash. He was a trash human being. Zack Morris was trash. Carlin was talking about him, by the way. Also, Google
Skeeter
Zack
was
Morris
the legit
trash.
guy on that show, man.
Yeah, that's true.
Hey, no joke. I met Skeeter one time. Hung out with him for like 2 hours.
Really?
Yes.
No way.
He is a very quiet dude. Very quiet, kind. He's weird. Like Zack Morris is not cool, but he's weird, dude.
And just to be clear, we're obviously not talking about the actor. We're talking about the character written in that show of Zack Morris. He was a sociopath. And pure and simple, it was a sociopath. He was manipulative. He took advantage of everybody. Even the extent to where he could pause real life and talk to the camera, break that fourth wall. I mean, it was almost as if the show is designed around Saved by the Bell is what we're talking about. The show Saved by the Bell.
And he never appreciated Kelly.
And he
never appreciated Kelly. Not even once.
Not even once. Yeah, that's awesome.
Kelly.
Oh, Kelly. You never appreciated Kelly, but even how he could pause real life and break that fourth wall and talk directly to us. I mean, even the writers were sort of casually recognizing that we were viewing the entirety through his lens. It was not, it was almost like a justified sociopath. It was strange. It was very, very odd. But there's a series out there on YouTube entitled Zack Morris is Trash. It has this little Zack Morris is Trash intro. Go find it. It's awesome.
Just like Kamala Harris, you know. Manipulative trash.
Oh, I see. Okay, right. So that's how easy it is to mislead in 2020. Now, here's what I have a major problem with is that at some point, both sides are going to start playing the same game. Jordan Peterson talks a lot about this in his understanding. He breaks it down saying that there's this inherent desire for humanity, human species, our kind, wanting and desiring to play by the same rules. In general, it's not always the case, but in general, if you lose a game, a sport or something like that, you're fine losing as long as everyone played by the same rules. Even if it's just sort of a gentleman's agreement or whatever else. If the final Hail Mary works and Doug Flutie really did what he did, as long as there's no pass interference or nothing blatant that they missed, it's in the record books, right? But if people stop playing by the same rules, there's this inherent desire to get something back. You start getting in this retribution or revenge cycle. You start wanting to play by the same rules as the other person because it seems it's not just an equity sense. It's not just something about being inequitable. It's something more than that. I can't quite define it, but go listen to some of Peterson's hierarchy stuff, and it does a decent job of explaining this. And I intro all this way to go to the next headline here from the Daily Wire, and we actually have a video. Sean, if you can go ahead and pull that video up here. It's under Congressman introduces bill that would have Democratic Party change name or be barred from participation in the House due to past support of slavery and Confederacy. This is coming from our guy, Representative Louis Gohmert, Republican from Texas. Shine's pulling up. That's a Twitter video right there where it says, here's the video. I want to let him explain it here in just a second in his own words. But he introduced a bill on Thursday. Pause real quick. Again, keep in mind that I'm going on this rant. I started with this George Carlin thing to indicate how easy it is to mislead in 2020. And when you start doing that, and it's so blatant, as that video was, it is so it's to say it's obtuse is not exactly correct. It's just it's on its sleeve. It's putting it out there for everybody to see. Hypocrisy isn't a thing anymore. It's just not. And it doesn't matter. You just flaunt the idea that George Carlin was standing against Trump, which he probably would have, but he also would have stood against the other side as well. When you're so willfully misleading, and unfortunately, let's be for real here, when you have a populace of very, very uninformed, naive individuals, which was what Carlin was advocating against, to inform yourself, you get both sides playing the same game. So Louis Gohmert comes out, introduced a bill on Thursday on the floor of the House of Representatives that would ban the Democratic Party. I mean, like the entire party, the entirety of the party. It would just ban the Democrat Party in general due to the party's history of having supported slavery and the Confederacy. Now, this is what he said. And Shannon, let me know when you got that video pulled up here. I'll just let him say in his own words. Here's what he said. He said, quote, "This is the standard to which they are holding everyone else. So the name change needs to occur." I'm telling you, everything I just explained is exactly what Representative Gohmert just said. I'm not supporting this. I just think it's a silly game that people are playing. It's a silly game that people are playing. Sean, go ahead and play that clip here. We'll see Gohmert for himself.
Whereas on June 18, 2020, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi ordered the removal from the Capitol portraits of 4 previous speakers of the House who served in the Confederacy, saying that these portraits, quote, "set back our nation's work to confront and combat bigotry," unquote. The men depicted in the portraits were Democrat Robert M.T. Hunter, Democrat Howell Cobb, Democrat James L. Orr, and Democrat Charles F. Crisp. Resolved that the Speaker of the House of Representatives shall remove any item that names, symbolizes, or mentions any political organization or party that has ever held a public position that supported slavery or the Confederacy from any area within the House wing of the Capitol or any House office building, and shall donate such item or symbol to the Library of Congress. And 2, that any political organization or party that has ever held a public position that supported slavery or the Confederacy shall either change its name or be barred from participation in the House of Representatives.
We just got a comment from YouTube, by the way. Says 45 lies. I presume that means President Trump being the 45th president lies, 45 lies, President Trump lies. It says David Duke and KKK have Trump's back, which this individual, I suppose, would be very supportive of a move like this. I suppose that comment would be very supportive of anything that even is tacitly related to racism at all. We have to do away with. So when Representative Gomer comes out and says, hey, this is the standard that's been set, man, anything that's even remotely related to racism, you're talking about the KKK, 45 lies, and YouTube just said the KKK. Hey, it's a very unfortunate reality, but which party is responsible for starting that? Let's get rid of all of it. Done. Out of here. And I think that comment fully encompasses this strange paradox that we're stuck in right now, where a headline, an account entitled 45 Lies, meaning obviously anti-Trump, could somehow be in favor by way of ideology of removing the Democrat Party entirely. This is the strange sense of idiocracy that we have found ourselves stuck, mired in right now. There's no way to cut through this ridiculous minutia. And do you see what I'm saying? All of this is just purely asinine. This is like this is children playing in a schoolyard with each other. This is where I'm banging my head against a brick wall of the first level of analysis because I get a comment here that's basically saying, well, KKK has Trump's back. All right, dude. So how far do we push that back? Are we ever going to be able to get to a conversation again? And for anybody that's just joined us this program here, let it be known, first and foremost, what Shine and I have dedicated the entirety of our adult lives to is to fight against this type of stuff, to fight against racist types of stuff, to fight against unconstitutionality, to fight against constitutional violations, to instill criminal justice reform, to make family units whole again, to repeal civil asset forfeiture, to get rid of qualified immunity. I'm talking every single thing that is being called for, or at least at one point was advocated for on the streets during these marches. Shannon and I have devoted the entirety of our lives to do. When we get on here and ask y'all to sign petitions and do stuff for us, it's not just because we're trying to make a living out of it, man. Like, we believe there is a calling behind this. If I could drop, I can't do this yet because we still got a campaign going on, but if I could drop the number of signatures that we have, the total right now for this property tax thing, it would blow your minds. It would blow your minds, the amount of movement that we can get on stuff when you're actually doing something aside from just virtue signaling. But the virtue signal itself, it gets us stuck in this weird philosophy where now, listen, we can't see past our own inadequacies. And we get a comment on here where it's basically saying, so 45 lies and KKK is for Trump, but at the same time, we have to get rid of all things racist, which means Democrat Party also. So we just I don't know, is it just pure nihilism? Is it just pure political nihilism? Is it just pure anarchism? I don't necessarily know. I don't necessarily know.
Let us destroy the world and remake it in our own image is what it looks like to me. It's like let's just get rid of it all and then remake it differently.
Dude, we're better. We have. Sorry, Sean, go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
We have to be better than this, right? And I do mean we. I mean, I have a mistake of using we too often here, but I do mean we. I mean anybody and everybody that my voice would be touching right now, in a sacrificial sense, man, in a sense of doing something better for your fellow man, in a sense of what I believe that it's altruistic compulsion. We're all compelled to do something better for our fellow man, so society and the stuff that we all live on top of can be better for all of us. Like a terrible decision by President Trump is going to affect me as much as it's going to affect a Democrat. A terrible decision by Governor Lee here in Tennessee is going to affect me as much as it affects a Democrat. We as a species are better than this, are we not? We as a country are better than this nonsensical exchange, are we not? And I used to ask that rhetorically, Shine, but now I'm just straight up asking, are we not better than this? Do I just have to accept this?
Yeah, I think you have to accept it a little bit. I mean, if we were better than this, it wouldn't be happening, right? I guess. I said it over a month ago that all we were going to get were these token things, these virtue signal things, and we were not going to get reform. Because cutting a police budget by a third is not reform. The things you mentioned earlier are reform. qualified immunity, all those different things that you mentioned. That's reform. And I told y'all we weren't going to get any of it. None of it.
Yeah.
None of it. Even though everyone in the country was for police reform, we're not going to get any of it because all the people with all the energy, and I hate to say it, and super low IQs are more happy with seeing statues fall over and pictures removed than actually working on the problem. They'd much rather spend their time trolling forums and video comment sections. That's their activism. And like not pooping on that too much because like look at us, we're here sitting here doing videos and stuff. But the real work isn't being worked on. And we've been and I don't mind using we either. We as a culture, and this is right and left, have been much more satisfied over little emotional jab type wins than actual change in government.
Yeah, dude,
and actual reform. And both sides are guilty of this.
Yes.
As much as anything else. And sometimes I think both sides are guilty of like loving the negative. I think some people thrive when they see the things they don't like. And this is for all sides, not both sides, all sides, anybody, every person. I think some people are even thriving off the negative as much as they thrive off the, oh, we got them.
Mm-hmm.
And we're missing all this, like, people are more in tuned, sort of, like paying attention to what government's doing than I think ever before, in a weird way. That may be part of the distortion of the conversation, is there's much more people involved who wouldn't have been involved before, like in the pre-Trump era. And there's lots of people who don't have any experience following government, following change. Maybe like last election was the first time they voted for a president. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So there's all these new people to it. It's like a new thing. It's like liking a new sports team or something like that. And then you start seeing your team win or your team lose and you're all rah-rah, you know? But you don't know how to play, you know? And I don't know, I'm kind of jumping all over the place with the metaphors, but the biggest point was, I said over a month ago, you just watch. People keep burning things down, taking pictures down, changing names of stuff, canceling things, and then there will be no actual reform in the legislation.
Right.
And they're doing that to y'all. They're doing it to I mean, they're doing it to all of us.
Yes.
But they're doing it to all of us. But how many times, just in my short life, has there been political will by the American people to do something?
Yes, and it's squandered.
And then it's squandered on like a little rabbit trail, man. It's like when it's like if you're in some kind of fighter jet and you have the lock on, you're locked. You're like ready to go. You're ready to fire the missile and take the plane out. And then they shoot out those things that make the missile miss it.
The flares,
right? The flares, yeah. And and every time we just follow the flare. We're like, plastic bag. Yeah. Every time. I mean, when George Floyd died, every single person, except for the most messed up people, were like, this needs to never happen again. And by the way, anything similar to it needs to not happen again. And by the way, this reminds me of other injustices. Those shouldn't happen again. Everyone was on board. You could have passed a criminal justice reform bill that has never been seen before 3 weeks after George Floyd. Now you're not going to see one for 3 or 4. You may not see one for 2 decades. People don't understand too. When you miss your moment in legislation, it's gone for years. So I said back in 2009 when the environmentalists didn't get the the carbon tax. And remember how much push there was for carbon tax. After they lost in the first term of Obama on carbon tax, I said it'll be a decade. Mm-hmm. And it's been more than a decade. That was in 2009. There hasn't been any serious environmental legislation since. And that was 11 years ago. And there wasn't that much political will. It seems to be proportional. The more political will there is and you don't get something done, the longer it takes to come back to it. And this is what I mean by there's people who don't understand how the flow of our government works and they're new to the process. And when People aren't willing to be patient. It's a weird time. But I'll tell you, if you're new to the deal, and I don't care if you're left or right or pro-Trump, anti-Trump, I don't care what you are. I'm going to give you a hint. Patience is key, and taking advantage of moments is key.
Yeah, man.
And real activism is key.
Yeah, real activism, right?
Complaining on Facebook is not that big of a deal. Putting in comments in the middle of a show that only like 15 people are watching is not that big of a deal. Making calls to your legislator, gathering up other people, having them email them. That's what makes things move.
Yes.
Not even protests don't make things move anymore. That's the move from 50 years ago. It got a lot of things done in the 60s. I haven't seen protests get any legislation done while I've been alive. But real activism works.
Well, see, but it makes something happen. But that's the problem. It doesn't make anything effective or legitimate happen. Daniel said in Facebook, how many likes can I get? Quote is what we're talking about before. That's basically what we're trading off here. It's keeping their party alive, whichever one it is, Democrat or Republican. It doesn't matter. Let's see. Eric just said in Facebook a second ago here, it's a tit for tat, in my opinion. Both arguments are done. Talking about the George Carlin thing is dumb. Talking about the Representative Gomer thing is dumb. It's all idiocracy as far as I'm concerned as well. He says they're both dumb, especially when today both sides are guilty of some pretty horrible things, especially in the war arena. Racism should be addressed, no doubt, but there are plenty of things that could be seen as just as evil or related. From drug laws, the failed drug war, and things needs to be talked about. 45 Lies in YouTube said just a second ago, where did this go? Let's put up the statue of King George III again. They lost, but after all, that was part of our history, wasn't it? He went on to say, put up the statue again. A great big mob took it down. And this is exactly what we're talking about. This is exactly what we're talking about. Distracting, regressive goals, regressive field marks. And when I say they're regressive, because think about it this way, okay? What did these marches start for in Chicago? They started against everything we just talked about. No-knock warrants, qualified immunity, civil asset forfeiture, police unions, inability to testify against other police officers. A lot of this stuff, lack of transparency, a lot of this stuff that, like I said before, our organization, Americans for Prosperity, we've been there. The company has been there for years, working on this for a very long time, doing the actual work. That's what these marches started against. And then, when's the last time you heard any one of those words? Does any 45 Lies in particular? I feel like you're on that side. You'd be on our side. Do you know what those words are? Qualified immunity? Civil asset forfeiture, the things that these started, the reasons by which police officers are allowed to do what they're doing, because the conversation is turned into the statue stuff. And then in Chicago, all people have to do to satiate the mob is give them a marginal, ineffective win, which Mayor Lightfoot just did. Just put a crane out there at 2 a.m., take away Columbus, and then, problem solved. On to the next thing. Does that help us for the future, though? These are distraction campaigns. This is what we're saying. They're not just distraction campaigns. They're campaigns meant to turn and divert away to instill something entirely different. We get in the program here, by the way. Norm says statues aren't our problem. People are. Rock says, you're right, Norm. Biden and his if you don't vote for me, you ain't black statement, racism 101 right there. Norm said more specifically, sin is our problem in his humble opinion. Daniel finally said here, shifting the Overton window to what is okay to talk about in the mainstream conversation. We will see talk about communism soon, real communism this time, not those gulag days. It's actually the comment I wanted to end with here in the bottom of the show notes. You actually find something, my wife, whose family fled communism in Romania. She posted this on her Facebook page. At the bottom of the page, there's the last story linked entitled, The Left's Cultural Revolution Will America Fall Like Romania Did, basically tying together ideas of, hey, man, this Marxist philosophy going on right now, has that ever been kind to minorities? Who's the first ones to go once Marxism really is brought to full fruition? You're going to choose individuality. You're going to choose an oppressive state. Those are basically your two shots. Hey, my name is Mr. Henry. This is Real News. David Shine Thompson. We're signing off right now. Got to hit this work meeting. We will be back tomorrow doing a big love each and every one of y'all sincerely. Open conversation, communication, dialogue. So when we have disagreements, it's disagreements amongst friends and not enemies. It's the key to solving a lot of this stuff, y'all. Love y'all. See y'all next time.